Welcome back, Commander. Though it may not know it yet, the galaxy is under threat. And to combat this threat, two idiots must literally fire a jeep through space. The game is Mass Effect, and this is the N7 Project.
Status report.
All right. Zach, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. We just got back from brunch. Went to the Hudson House up in Addison.
Cool.
Yeah. They have some of the best popcorn chicken I've ever had. It's just the herbs and spices are so good.
Interesting.
100% recommend.
That's one of those things that you don't think of having like a gourmet version of, you know? But I'm always interested in like the gourmet version of otherwise considered low class food. Low class, yeah, interesting. Okay, we'll have to give that a try.
Yeah, absolutely recommend it. What have you been up to?
Oh, not much. We our dog has been on quarantine for about 2.5 months because he had a slight
poor pretty boy.
Yeah, poor boy. He had a slight oral infection, which isn't dangerous or anything, but it is transmissible, so we couldn't allow him to go out. And yesterday was his official release from being.
Oh boy!
So we got to take him to the dog park, and he was over the moon. It was really adorable.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. So hopefully we're hoping to take him to a play date with another dog today. We'll see if that works out or not. And then hopefully he'll be able to finally like stop going stir crazy every night, because we try to play with him and stuff, but he's a puppy and he wants to do so much, and he wants to meet people, and he wants to go see his adoring public and play with other dogs and stuff. So.
Oh yeah.
All right.
He's a good boy.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot to cover today, so let's get right into our mission debrief.
All righty.
Mission debrief.
All right. First of all, the most important question. What do you think the Reapers do in deep space between cycles?
System updates. I just figured they'll just defragging, reinstalling whatever, Windows 73 or something.
Yeah, that's good. I think they're running the world's longest D&D campaign.
What do you think they play as?
See, D&D is the obvious answer because it's the big one, but I think they might be the only entity in the world that could actually handle GURPS.
They can actually process Pathfinder combat rounds in seconds. They can handle it in real time.
God. I have a special place in my heart for Pathfinder, especially the Rise of the Rune Lord campaign that you did. But man, high level Pathfinder it's a slog.
It is.
Yeah.
It's what made me look elsewhere and then ultimately settle on D&D for my high fantasy RPG fix. But yeah, it just becomes a high level game of who wins initiative and then rocket tag. Yeah,
a little bit. Remind me to send you, I think I have a copy of Quest, which is a much more rules light, role play heavy system for high fantasy.
Interesting.
I think you might actually like it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking about Mass Effect. Let's get back.
Yes.
After Shepard has completed Therum, Ferris, Noveria, and Ilos, they receive a notification that they have to return to the Citadel right now. I guess the Council are technically our bosses, but still, I would like to finish mapping these mineral deposits. Fine, whatever. Meeting with the Council and Udina, they decide that the Conduit and the Reapers are all an exaggeration by Saren, or a lie or something, and they think now that he's exposed, he won't be able to attack them directly. In fact, they're so confident that they're grounding the Normandy because they think, and will admit they were right, that if Shepard was allowed to go back out, they would go immediately to Ilos at the first opportunity. Sulking on the Normandy, Shepard has a quick scene with their paramour until getting cocked-blocked by a call from Anderson, who wants you to meet him at Flux. Anderson thinks this is all bullshit and says he's going to override the lock on the Normandy for you, either through C-Sec security or Udina's computer, which, considering he's a badass, he does pretty much easily. Headed off to Ilos, you now get unrestricted free time with your girl or boyfriend. We'll be mature and leave the sex jokes at the cabin door. Next thing you know, you're at the Mew relay and ready to go kick some ass on Ilos. There's a whole thing here about there being nowhere to land on the Normandy, but you can drop the Mako, fucking hell, the Mako, in a small area, which Joker does get a little moment of saying he can do real confidently. We find ourselves on Ilos just as Saren is disappearing through a very heavy door. I'm not sure exactly what happens during this next part because I always get immediately incredibly lost on Ilos, but you kill some Geth and you open that door and you drive the Mako down some corridors, having some nice conversations with your companions until your progress is blocked by a mysterious force field. But there is a suspiciously convenient door to one side and a long elevator ride. Luckily, after that, you've just got a Prothean VI to talk to. This is Vigil, the last remnant of the secret science facility here on Ilos. It seems that as the Protheans warred with the Reapers, they set this place up as a sort of refuge for some of their people. But ultimately, they didn't pack enough AAs because the war raged on. More and more of the life pods had to be shut down to save power. Eventually, only a handful of Protheans were left. Not enough to restart civilization, not with that attitude anyway, but they did have a secret weapon, the conduit. You see, it turns out that they knew about the mass relay network being a trap and were working to reverse engineer it. Moreover, the Citadel, the seat of the power for galactic civilization, was a trap as well. The Reapers created it to be an enticing place to set up a power base and left the Keepers to run it in their absence while they sat in deep space between extension events. When it's time to harvest the galaxy again, the Keepers activate the Citadel, and all the Reapers warp into the heart of the galaxy to take everyone by surprise. Now, our enterprising Prothean scientists had this figured out, and they managed to make a single mass relay of their own on the one-way trip to the Citadel from here on Ilos. Using it, they managed to get to the Citadel and mess with the Keepers, preventing the start of the next cycle. Which is why Saren is here. He's going to use the conduit as a backdoor into the Citadel, activate it, and bring the Reapers all at once. So we have to follow him. Apparently by driving the Mako, oh, that's why we need the Mako, directly into the conduit and flying it all the way to the Citadel to put this all to a sticky, bloody end.
Oh, so...
Initial thoughts. What do you think of Ilos?
Not a fan, honestly.
Yes, I'm with you that as well. I think that I have a lot of the same trouble on Ilos that I had on Pharos. What's that place called? Pharos, yeah. Where the textures of the walls and the layout of the level really makes me feel, especially during that first section before you get onto the Mako area, I cannot find the hallway I'm supposed to walk down ever.
I'll say that the level design in particular for this felt like a step back to a different age, like almost like the levels of like Quake 2 and like,
yes,
like it felt like everything was made out of like BSP rather than like,
yeah. And the texture they have on all of those surfaces is not a great texture. Like it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel immersive. It feels really rough.
Mm-hmm. No, it felt like this is like someone like, oh shit, we need something for this level. Quick, knock it out. And we can't really assign you any artists to make this, so just use what we have.
Yeah, with the exception, or they wasted all of their time making those statues, I guess, of what might be presumed to be Protheans with like the tentacles coming out of their faces, which are super cool looking. Yeah. I really like those. Mm-hmm. But we'll have to get into some Shadowbreaker stuff about that. But yeah, they didn't put enough visual language into the design of that first little antechamber area where you're going to go open up a door, because I get so lost all the time. Like I end up just like flailing around for 30 minutes until I bumble my way into wherever it is that I'm supposed to go. And you do have there is a cool little moment in that area where after when you're finding the control for the door, you're killing Geth during this time too, although they're just the same old Geth we've always been fighting. They're not, there's a couple of armatures, which are kind of cool. But anyway, there's a point where you find like the distress signal that the Protheans are sending out. And I like the fact that Shepard can understand the Prothean language now. And there's a little moment, I brought Liara, as I am wont to do. And she has a little like moment where she's like, oh, I guess that makes sense. You've got like basically all of the Prothean knowledge in your head now. And so giving Shepard the language skills was kind of cool. It's such a weird, I like it. I almost wish it had been more of a plot element.
Yeah.
Later, they kind of drop that after that. But it's cool. I like that.
So one of the like little gameplay elements that I feel was very poorly implemented was the fact that you can actually hack those armatures to be on your side. But by the time I remember that, I've killed everything in the room.
I might have pulled that maneuver off one time in the many times I've played this section. Inevitably, I just stumble my way into the armatures and like kill them. Or because there's two different sets of armatures. The ones up top, which you can, if you go the certain route down, you can like disable them. And there's the other ones where it's like an inactive one that you can activate and have it be on your side. But yeah, again, all the time, that one's always dead ahead of time. Like, or everything's dead by the time you've activated your friendly one. And it's like,
exactly.
You guys didn't signpost this quite well enough for me to like make use of it. It would be such a cool thing to discover organically. It doesn't seem to happen enough. Yeah.
It just seems like, what's this interact thing? Oh, I'll deal with that after I kill all these guys.
Exactly.
Okay, now let's check to see what that was. Oh.
Yeah, and at least for me, by this point in the game, I'm high enough level and I'm used enough to playing the game that like I'm not doing a whole lot. I don't really need a lot of help from those guys.
Exactly.
But it's cool. I like the fact that they went for it, but this little antechamber is not one of my favorite parts of the game. That being said, once you open the door, that's actually one of my more favorite Mako sections, because I do not have a lot of trouble with the Mako physics in the Ilos like sewer area or whatever it is that we're driving through. It's very straightforward, which is nice. As far as Mako sections go, that's actually pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
So you drive through that, and this is one of the points where they started to figure out, oh wait, we should lean more on the ability for our party members to talk while we're in the Mako, which was really nice. I don't remember quite as much of this on the other sections.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing Liara and Tali talk about the ruins that they're running through and everything was actually cool. And I love that this is they're going to lean on that more heavily in the future with additional with stuff that happens in the later games. And I love that that's a feature that they bring in. It always makes it feel more alive.
To me, this reminded me of one of the final segments in the original Halo, when you're escaping the ship and the Warthog.
It really does. Yeah. Especially
and
once
I felt like they were like a direct reference to that almost.
Yes, especially after you talk to Vigil. Yeah. So because once you talk to Vigil, there's I don't think there actually is any kind of mechanical race against time thing here, but there's an idea that like, oh, you need to get to the Citadel as quickly as possible. And therefore I am given the role-playing freedom to just blow past all of the Geth to not kill all of them.
If I remember correctly, they actually pop up a timer.
Oh, they do?
On screen.
I don't remember there being a timer when I just played, but it does nonetheless. The timer part of it, that feeling of I've just got to do this, is a lot more fun than sitting there and like slowly killing all of the Geth from a mile away with your sniper Mako. And that makes me feel like there's a phrase from a really good game designer, which is like, if left to their own devices, players will optimize the fun out of any game. And the fact that once you have a time pressure on you with the Mako, it makes me realize that, oh, the most efficient way to play the Mako is the least fun way to play the Mako, where you drive up to, you can just barely see the enemies and you zoom in from a billion miles away and you fire at them with your hit scan weapons is incredibly safe. It is the way that you can play the Mako with the most, the safest way to do it. But nonetheless, it's the least fun way to play the Mako. Like all of those segments are more fun if you're running around gunning through it. That being said, if you're not also having to kill things at the exact same time, like something about like the controls of the Mako don't lend themselves well to running and gunning in the way that the Halo Warthog did.
Yeah.
So it's,
I mean, I definitely wish they had implemented more areas where like the goal is to escape an area rather than to use it as a go to this place and kill everything tool.
Yes.
Because like, imagine if they had done something like that with the Rachni, or like where you're just trying to escape a flood of Rachni.
Especially if all they would have had to have done, honestly, was implement something very short range that caused a lot of damage. Like a force field or something, or like almost like a cow catcher, like a thing that makes the Mako's area of like a really close area of effect thing, so that all you have to do is drive over enemies to cause a lot of damage. And that would be, honestly, their physics are not bad enough. They could survive. That would really make that fun. They would also have, it would also be better if they could just make a Mako that drove a little bit better. But if they really encouraged you to sort of drive.
I mean, for the most part, I don't think the problem with the Mako was the controls necessarily. I feel like the problem with the Mako was the levels it was forced to traverse.
Yes. Yeah. I think you're right about that, because it's not that much different than the Warthog. It does feel a little bit different than the Warthog, which I'm kind of holding up as the last vehicle shooter game vehicle that I really remember being great. It does feel a bit, that one is a bit better, but it's not noticeably better. Really what it is that the level design was all custom built for it.
Yes.
And the Mako is more enjoyable, considerably more enjoyable on Noviria, Pharos, here on Ilos. Those sections are all more enjoyable than the vast majority of the time that you spend in the Mako on random ass planets trying to mountain goat your way up a vertical slope because you have no idea what you're doing because they didn't design those levels.
And there's no direction to like, oh, well, if you just go around, there's a nice smooth slope up to this.
Yeah. So like,
or more often than not, there's not, and you have to do this anyways.
Yeah. So a lot of our disgust for the Mako, especially my disgust, probably comes from just like residual garbage that is coming from those random planets, which admittedly, they obviously learned their lesson because that does not reoccur. I mean, I don't know if that's a spoiler or not, but like this is the last game that we're going to see those random planets in, and all the better for them. I mean, they were a neat feature.
Not really spoilery, but in Andromeda, they introduced something Mako analogous.
Yeah.
But they have done a lot more polish on it. Yeah. Like I never feel like I'm forced to go up, impossible terrain. There's always a very clear route to places.
And we'll talk about Mass Effect 2's Hammerhead at some point too.
Yes.
Which was obviously a response to the lack of a Mako in Mass Effect 2. And it functions in a really it functions in an interesting way because it only ever appears in stuff that was that was built for their Hammerhead. 100%. And that was obviously a response to how the Mako doesn't work well unless you design for it, basically. So, okay. Well, we haven't talked at all about the discussion with Vigil yet. And that's probably the biggest moment of Ilos, where you get to talk to as close to a Prothean as you're going to get in this game. And I remember, like the conversation with Sovereign, the first time I played Mass Effect 1, getting to talk to Vigil is one of those oh shit moments. Kind of like that because you've been hearing about the Protheans for so long at this point. You've been interacting with the Prothean beacons, you've been running through their ruins and stuff. And now you get to talk to a VI who is built by the Protheans, their version of Avena, right? Like it's their Siri.
Yeah.
And no longer are they hiding behind, the mystery of the Protheans. This thing just flat out is willing to tell you the plot of what happened here on Ilos. And I quite dig the story of Ilos. The idea that like they had built this as, okay, we know we're going to be destroyed by the Reapers. Let's build a sanctum of, a freezer full of Protheans that we can use to restart Prothean society after the Reapers are gone, after they've destroyed everything else. But they didn't do it sufficiently well that they were able to actually succeed at that. And when they, this thing starts making decisions about, okay, first non-essential personnel and then lesser scientists, and then finally just the core team of like 14 people or something. And then,
and then like they put together the beacon basically.
Yeah. Well, the beacons were the beacons that we have been finding are ones that had been laid out in the galaxies to send people to Ilos. If the other Protheans were given up, if there had been any survivors from the Reaper War, was the idea that they might find those beacons and find their way to Ilos, which explains why the beacons are the trail to find this place that they end up being. It's like it's not. They are purposefully designed to have somebody do what we did to them, which is actually pretty cool.
Yes,
I like that. It makes a plot explanation that really works. But then I love the story of it's one of those things like I like the very like the story told in absence of this team of Prothean scientists who wake up, find out that their plan has already failed because there aren't enough of them to restart Prothean civilization. But they've got the one mass relay that will take them to the Citadel, and they know about the Keepers. And they figured, because I'm assuming at this point the Reapers had already activated the Citadel, and they had known what the sort of the main problem was, and so they institute a daring raid of some sort. Like they have their own suicide mission into the Citadel, and they succeeded. Like we know that they succeeded because the Reapers didn't already activate it, and like I kind of want to see that story. Like I want to that would be such a cool prequel mission to play as some Protheans.
Oh yeah.
Those guys obviously like not enough credit goes to those Protheans who like saved our cycle from being just completely wiped out the same way that they were, which is cool.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool story element that I would definitely love to see, like do like a comic or something about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe they did or wrote. There's a billion Mass Effect books and comics and other games, including a mobile game that's entirely about Jacob from Mass Effect 2 that apparently you can't play anymore because they took it off the App Store for whatever system it was on.
Huh.
Yeah. We're going to have a whole discussion about this stuff once we get deeper into 2 and 3, where they keep introducing characters that were mostly transplants from other media. And I think that those those characters often suffer a lot because then the games don't spend enough time establishing those characters. They expect you to already like them because of their existence in another property, some of which we cannot even get a hold of now. Like I'm going to have to see if I can find maybe a let's play of that mobile game or something, or at least a breakdown of what happened in it, because I do want to find out what the deal is with it, but you literally cannot play it right now. That's a little bit off topic, but so that being said, so maybe this story is told somewhere, but we're only covering the games so far. I don't think we have enough time to read all the books, and we might watch the anime. We'll see. That's a relatively low amount of investment. Yeah. So the Vigil conversation is real cool. And then then the best Mako section probably in Mass Effect 1 is where you get up after you've talked to Vigil, where you're just blowing past all of those Geth on your way to just fire the Mako through space. Which,
thematically, I think that's probably the coolest point. I think gameplay wise, my favorite is still Vermeer.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm saying,
I should say traditional gameplay wise.
Well, but I'm saying I think that the Mako section in Ilos feels better than the Mako section on Vermeer. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Like Vermeer's environment is beautiful. Vermeer is my favorite looking planet, and I think that its combat section is really, really good as well. And it probably in that sense is definitely better than Ilos, but just that one segment after you talk to Vigil, but on your way to fire yourself into the conduit is maybe the best Mako section in the game to me for my. Yeah.
I'll grant you that.
Yeah. Just because you can't take it slow. You have to be fast, and you can't, well, maybe you can, but you're not encouraged to sit there and fight every single thing and worry about it. You're just blowing through. And that feels like what the Mako ought to have been doing the whole time.
And honestly, taking a ground vehicle through a mass relay is just about the most ridiculous, coolest ass thing. Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and I love it. I love that they're like, well, this will be fun. And it makes the Mako make sense now in context of why you would bring it along. That's why we have it. It's so that we have something that we can fire ourselves through through space in, and that's fun. You can just imagine as the little team of 3 are being fired through the void, the little I really dig that.
It does make me wonder, I always assumed that ships had special shielding or something that was required to trend. Can you just be a guy and activate the
I don't know,
the thing and just be hurtled through
if it was me writing this, my thing would be that you have to have some sort of internal gravity system, because to mitigate the acceleration effects of the mass relay.
Yeah.
And that's why they need element 0, is because element 0 allows you to affect gravitational systems and mass and all those things. So you can't just throw a rock at a mass relay, or sorry, you could throw, you couldn't put a person in a barrel into a mass relay and have them go across, because they would get turned to jelly inside. But
unless that person was a biotic.
Yeah, but unless that person's a biotic, and I'm assuming that the Mako has some sort of internal gravity inertial compensator thing, because it flips itself back over when you get it when you turtle it.
Yeah.
So it's got to have something gravitational going on in there. So do you have anything more you want to cover before we move on into Shadowbroker Files? Because I have a couple little Shadowbroker Files things that I want to talk about here.
No, I think that's it. It's definitely kind of we're getting down to the wire on
Yeah.
Like things are coming to a head
Yeah.
at the end of this.
Yeah. I mean, this is the second to
particular
last
session.
episode of us covering Mass Effect 1 because the next one's.
Oh, we didn't even talk at all about what's his face and the council and Udina specifically.
Yeah. We started our discussion after after us going on the part on the Citadel. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm assuming that you sent Anderson to Udina's office, right?
We let him choose, and that is where he went.
Yeah, and getting to see Anderson punch Udina is so fun.
It's so gratifying.
I actually, because I've seen that scene enough times, I sent him to CSEC instead, which is a cool little scene, although definitely not. If you're playing the game, definitely send him to Udina's office because it's much better. Udina definitely deserves the punch in the face. But like Anderson, he punches some CSEC security officer and then he starts doing things and somebody shoots him in the leg. And he is injured and still manages to hit the button. It's interesting. The existence of the Citadel section is weird to me because I was trying to figure out why they forced you back there. Because realistically, after I was done with Vermeer, my desire was to immediately go to Ilos. And I was trying to figure out why it felt necessary to go back to the Citadel first and then there. And there are apparently, although I've never played them, there are two little, I don't say I haven't ever, there are two quests on the Citadel that you can only play during that one section, basically.
Really?
Yeah.
Which are those?
One of them is, they're really quick. They're little things like if you walk to Flux, there's a guy asking for drugs, I think, there. And there's another one down in, I think, Cora's Den where you're just basically going to go talk to a guy. It's really weird. And neither of them are fully fleshed out things, but obviously they maybe thought that you were going to use this as your last chance to take care of Citadel side quests or something, or maybe do some shopping.
I always stop by, CSEC and get the latest Spectre weapons and whatnot.
Yeah. I guess I don't know mechanically off the top of my head because they do the quest log. This section of the quest of the plot is called the Race Against Time. So maybe there is a mechanical clock running in the background about this is the start of the end game of the game. They're going to use that as a choke off point where anything that happens after you leave this Citadel thing is going to happen under some sort of timer. I don't know what happens if you dick around on the world map after this.
I don't think you actually get the option. As soon as you
leave, you just head back out.
I don't think you plot a course or anything. You just
no, you do because I definitely remember selecting Ilos and then moving it over.
Okay.
And I even checked all the planets in that sector or in that system to make sure there wasn't anything to be surveyed, which naturally there isn't, which is the correct move. But nonetheless, completionists have to try. Let me see if is there a time? Google's probably not going to tell me if I say what happens if you dick around after the Citadel on Mass Effect. Yeah, it doesn't say anything on the wiki about you must go there immediately. I always do because I always try to clean up everything ahead of time.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, there isn't a mechanical thing. Oh, it would be cool if there was. Obviously, that was an idea that they were thinking about because this kind of light spoilers, there will be something like that in future games. They obviously learned from it. And we didn't talk about the final romance scene at all, which we can do before we move on.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you guys were on Liara, right?
We were, yes.
Yeah. I was surprised at how from my perspective in 2022, that sex scene seems really tame.
Yeah, it does. I mean, since then I've played games like The Witcher and others where they're a lot more explicit about what they show.
Yeah.
I know at the time it was very scandalous.
Yeah, it was a big deal at the time. When Mass Effect, 2007, when this thing came out, it was a huge deal. A AAA game with a sex scene in it, especially a possible same-sex sex scene in it, was just a huge deal.
Yeah.
But you don't even see nips. Is very tame. And even the depiction of what the actions are is very
they just kind of writhe against each other a little bit.
They're I don't want to get too explicit considering that, I don't want to, but they're not doing anything that seems realistic, maybe is the way to put it. It's very, it's very artistic in quote marks. It's very interpreted.
Yeah.
It feels like the kind of sex scene that you might have seen I don't even know what to put it. Like, I don't know where it felt very weird. It felt kind of floaty or something.
It felt like The Sims were like just a little bit more explicit.
Or just taking
Like,
itself a little more seriously. Like it was definitely that they were trying to depict a love scene instead of a sex scene, I guess is maybe the way to put it. But man, it felt, I was like, man, I can't remember. Like in retrospect, it feels so weird that was such a big deal.
Like, it feels like the kind of thing like where like it doesn't feel particularly horny, but you would still feel weird watching it with your parents in the room.
Yes. 100%. And it's funny. When did God of War come out?
Right around that time, I think.
The original God of War is what I'm looking for. It was within that range, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, God of War had been out for 2 years at this point. The original God of War was 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And is it weird that like there's in the very first God of War, in like the second mission, you start off with having a threesome with some random chicks, and literally they make a mini game out of it, which is ridiculous. But the way they handle it is that they just pan over to like the bedside table that's like next to the bed where all the action's happening, and you just see this thing getting knocked around by the movements on the bed. And like, weirdly enough, that feels more explicit than what happens in Mass Effect 1.
Well, I mean, you're directly interacting with that, so it feels a little more personal, I guess.
A little dirtier, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a bit strange. These are I'm not even sure if these are really complaints. It's just, it feels weird from where we are. Other games will do more than this. This is a groundbreaking one, I guess. It was just kind of strange from the perspective coming out here. I mean, it's nothing wrong with it, really. You know, again, I think they were trying to depict a love scene, not a sex scene, which I think explains some of the way that it is, if not all of it. Also, I'd have to say, like, as two straight white dudes, we'd probably have to consult, but we have to maybe get an outside perspective to confirm this. But man, that did not seem like the way two women make love. That felt like like a guy writing two women having sex.
I mean, and I feel like Mass Effect suffers from a lot of that, at least until Mass Effect 3.
They get better as the games go on that, although they never completely escape it. But it definitely, it's like, you guys maybe could have hired a woman who has some experience with that to maybe direct that scene or something. Anyway, it's just a little bit weird. I do like that they included it. I like the presence of romances in the games. We should, I feel like I should have gone back and watched maybe a breakdown of the Caden romance or something. Because I think I must have seen it at some point.
I don't think I've ever seen it either. So I don't think I've ever seen it either. I don't remember like any of the cutscenes being dramatically different from each other, at least in Mass Effect 1.
The cutscenes are very similar. I know that the one with Ashley's really similar too, but I was thinking more about like the romantic lead up, the conversation stuff, which I don't really remember a whole lot about. I can't remember if I played it or not. I wasn't paying a lot of attention if I was, because Caden is a human ball of milk. But I don't know how else to describe it. He's just so not there.
Yeah.
But
I do think it's a little weird that like the romance with Liara like focuses a little bit on like, I've never done this before. Like when the whole thing with
we talked about this already.
With the Asaris that like they're supposed to be like interspecies breeding kind of.
And she's a lot older than Shepard. She's like and
the fact that she makes a big deal of it is a little strange. But
again, that felt like the decision that a male writer made because it seemed right for a male writer. And not everybody would have made that decision, but at the time it was probably the way it was going to happen. Anyway, okay. Again, I like the inclusion of romances. I think they can be done better. I think they will be done better later on as well. This is just a first outing.
I do think it'd be kind of hilarious if like they'd gone the other direction and like she was just like comparing you to like the Krogan and Turian she's been with in the past and just doesn't quite measure up, I guess.
Maybe, I don't know. But that would be weird. I'm sure that somebody's written that fanfic.
I'm sure, yeah.
So, okay, let's move into Shadow Broker Files because we had a couple of things to cover. So,
Shadow Broker Files.
Chatterbooker Files, again, this is the spoilery content where we can be off the chain. So one thing, what the fuck are those statues on Ilos?
They're definitely not. They're definitely not Protheans.
They're definitely not Protheans, because we see Protheans later. We're going to talk about one in our character bracket today, and those things are not. I'm trying to see if there's an entry on the Prothean entry in. Yeah, I think. Okay, so I can only conclude that they intended those to be Protheans of some form, because they look also like the screenshots that we get inside of the visions. They look like they're the same creature, and they are very much not. So that's just a straight up retcon. It's got to be a straight up retcon.
I mean, it could also be like one of their subjugated races. We know in Mass Effect 3 that
that's true.
The Protheans were very imperialistic and had pretty much dominated the entire galaxy at that point.
Yeah.
So it could be like a subjugated race or something, but I do get the feeling that those were meant to be.
They really were meant
Protheans.
They had like maybe there's another explanation by the time we get to 3, but at the time they assumed these were going to be Protheans when they made this game. Now that being said, I love those statues. They are fucking creepy as hell. They're great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely get the feeling like this was sort of something that got concepted late game and wasn't really run past the writers, or the writers hadn't really considered the Protheans that much and just kind of greenlit it, like, fine, we'll just go with that. And then when they got around to Mass Effect 2, we're like, oh no, we need to actually make these, something unique and cool.
I have another theory, which is that they weren't thinking about this at all. They made this Mass Effect 1 version of the Protheans, and then they made the collectors completely independent. And they didn't make the decision to make the collectors into the Protheans until late stage, after they'd already done development in 2.
Maybe. I feel like the intention for the collectors to be the Protheans was always the case.
I don't think that's. We'll have to find out when we get to 2 if it becomes obvious or not. But and I don't know. Maybe it's possible to do some research on this and find out, but it would make a lot of sense to me that they had already done a bunch of concept arting and stuff about the collectors as a different, maybe they were a client race or some other origin for them, and then retconned them into being maybe not at the very last minute in 2, but where they had done enough work already that they were going to stick with it, and then they were just willing to live with the fact that this doesn't fit anymore.
Actually, hang on just a second. I think I have an art book for Mass Effect 2. I'll be right back.
By all means.
All the character concepts. There's some really cool concept art in these.
Yeah, I imagine the visual art in Mass Effect is pretty great. There are some misses. I was thinking about this just the other day, why so many of the characters, when they're in their fancy dress, specifically when they put women characters in their dresses and stuff, why they look worse. And I think it might have to do a little bit with their animation. Like when you put Femshep in a dress, she still walks like she's wearing cargo pants.
Yeah. Well, the little tidbit on the collectors is it does not provide much. Doesn't provide much input into their thought process on it.
Yeah. We may never know unless we get a hold of somebody. But it definitely feels like, to me, it feels like a retcon more than anything else.
Yeah, I'll grant you that.
Yeah. That being said, I mean, I like the original designs. I think also maybe somebody was working under the theory that if they made the collectors too close to the statue, that people would figure it out too quickly.
Yeah.
And so it's a deliberate subversion of expectations, which I hate that philosophy that a lot of writers do, where they deliberately make things less clear because they don't want people to guess. When for the record, people guessing is the right, you want to provide people with enough information that somebody who's smart and paying attention will be able to predict things before it's revealed. That's actually called good. Yeah. That's actually good writing. It's not something that you want to avoid. You don't want to signpost absolutely everything, but okay. There was something else we were going to talk about.
Anything with a vigil or?
I should have made a note of it. This is what happens when I don't make a note of.
This is what happens when you don't leave a note.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly the Javik stuff that we're gonna learn a lot more about the Protheans later.
Yeah.
And some of that is incompatible with some of the stuff we see here, although not that much. I mean, the writing all seems pretty consistent. It's mostly the visual things that kind of don't necessarily completely match up. I wonder if maybe those cutscenes that we see in the vision, if maybe those were a late game addition or done kind of late in the process, where they feel a little bit maybe more rushed, for example, is what I'm saying. Like maybe they were things that people weren't.
I definitely feel like they didn't have an idea of what the Protheans looked like until they started developing Mass Effect 2.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, in that case, let's move on to our character bracket.
Character bracket.
So, in this lined up serendipitously because we have Javik versus Samara. If anybody's not able to remember who they are, Javik is a DLC companion from Mass Effect 3. He is a living Prothean. He's a Prothean that was held in a facility a lot like Ilos on a different planet. And everything else was shut down around him, and he's the only pod left. And you wake him up, and you spend a lot of time talking with him, and it's got knock-on effects to various interactions and stuff. He's actually a pretty well integrated DLC character. He's also not like he was a subversion of expectations. People kind of thought of the Protheans up until that point as being kind of benevolent and peaceful, and it turns out that they were xenophobic assholes who subjugated the entire galaxy. And he carries on that assholish behavior. And then Samara is a Mass Effect 2 character or companion who is one of your mainline companions. She's not a DLC or anything. She's I don't know if they technically call her a matriarch or not, but she's an older Asari called a Justicar who goes around basically acting as the Asari version of the Spectre, as far as I can tell. They just do a bunch of their own jobs. And specifically,
from what I understand, she's basically a biotic paladin.
Yeah. She has taken upon herself to undertake a mission where she is hunting down her own children, because apparently she is a carrier of a gene that allows that when she has children, they are more likely than not to become the Yakshi, which we talked about when we talked about Morinth the other day, who are essentially Asari vampires. And she's gone around basically hunting these Yakshi, and will introduce her hunting Morinth. And then she has some interaction with that stuff later on. I like Samara quite a lot. She actually has one of the sweetest romances in the series.
She does. It's very, very chaste, I guess.
It felt like, and when you liken to her paladin, it reminds me, it feels like a courtly romance. It feels like we have other obligations and we can't really partake in this right now, but we both feel it. And I really enjoyed her romance in 2. I've played it before, and I like it's not the normal romance that you see in video games. You know, she reads as quite a bit older than Shepard, so it's got kind of a May-December thing going on there, but they're still on equal footing. She's big on her obligations and her quests, you know, that she can't be part of this. She's got kind of a warrior monk aesthetic and vibe. Yeah. And I love the sort of thing of like, they don't overcome the thing that keeps them apart. She acknowledges that she feels it similarly and is like, well, we're not going to be together, but I understand it. And there's like this other subtle, like unspoken connection between, it's really sweet. I really like it. And
I definitely it's like one of the more maturely handled relationships in the game.
Yeah, it feels like a very mature relationship, which is really sadly hard to find in video games of a really mature.
Another interesting tidbit about her is the voice actress is the mother of Billie Eilish.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting, because I know that her voice actress often cosplays as Samara too. You can find a bunch of images online where she's wearing a very, very good Samara cosplay.
Yeah, I think I've seen that a few times. Didn't they model Samara a bit after her, I think?
Maybe. They do that a lot.
Because I remember her facial structure looked very similar.
They do that a lot. They almost all of the large, male Shep is based off of a like Ukrainian model or something. And a bunch of other characters are pulled off of real people. So I can definitely see a resemblance between Maggie Baird and and Samara. They look enough alike that I'm sure somebody, if not like getting 3D scan data, at least had a picture of the voice actress up on their desk while they were making her. And they did a good job because Samara's face is a good version of that. I really like her. The other option is Javik, who is. Is there any reason why we would pick Javik over Samara?
See, I was actually going to say, as much as we've talked about Samara, like Javik would be my pick to continue on. I feel like he provides such, like, I don't feel that Samara actually contributes that much to the main plot.
Oh, okay.
Like she's a great side character. And there's definitely, like, the romance we discussed is definitely one of the better handled ones, but Javik offers just this huge insight onto something that's been a core driving force in the game up till this point.
I just don't like him is the thing. Like
that's fair.
Yeah. Like he's interesting. He doesn't, I never am bored when I'm talking to him. Like I want to hear the things he has to say, but I never want to bring him on missions. And I feel like he doesn't, he's just an asshole. And like, I'm cool with characters that are assholes in interesting ways, but something about him rubs me the wrong way. And whereas, and you, by the way, you can fuck him, by the way. If you,
what?
Yeah. He's available as a,
missed that.
As a, romance is the wrong option, but when they made the Citadel DLC, they made several characters able to be romance, but like you can end up in bed with them in a, I don't think that shirt even shows anything, but him and Vega, both can end up in bed with a femshep if they're not romancing anybody else is the thing.
Interesting.
Is interesting. I guess we're looking at two different criteria because I think I agree with you that Samara doesn't provide a lot of input on the plot, although she does do a little bit of world building about the Asari culture. It's really interesting to see an Asari, to get a lot of information about an Asari who's not Liara, to see the other side of their culture. And she doesn't do.
I feel like she's an excellent not counter or flip side of the coin to the Asari culture from Liara.
Yeah. They provide very different perspectives on that culture, which I think is good. But yeah, you're right. I mean, like, she's just coming along to help out. She's not involved in the plot of Mass Effect 2. I do like her segment in Mass Effect 3 where you're going to the monastery, and that's one of the coolest sections of Mass Effect 3, although she's not really doing much there. You're handling that mostly yourself.
Yeah.
That being said, and Javik absolutely, I mean, like, yeah, he gives you this huge amount of information that you would not have gotten anywhere else. And one thing that's cool about his implementation in 3 is that everybody, because there was a huge complaint at the time that was a day one DLC, and everybody was saying that it should have just been included in the game. And I'm not totally convinced by that argument, because if you want to make a really good DLC, you have to start working on it with the main game, because when they did that, they put a ton of integration for that character into the main game. All of the other characters have voiced lines where they're reacting to Javik and talking to Javik. And there's a lot of really good integration there that they could not have done if they had started development on Javik after Mass Effect 3 was done, because they would have had to bring all those same people back in, and it would have been too expensive. And they wouldn't have been able, I'm sure he would feel like a tacked on character in the way that some of these other characters do, especially Mass Effect 2 in a lot of ways.
I mean, that said, like, Citadel DLC was an even better DLC, and that came later. Like, that was obviously still in development at the time of their release.
Yeah.
And had all those same interactions.
I guess. It doesn't bother. If you're working on DLC content while you're in production for the main game, but it's always intended to come out after the game is finished, or it's going to come out separately from the main part of the game, if it's always been cordoned off, that doesn't bother me. I do definitely agree with people that, like, if something was meant to be in the game from day one, and then at some point you say to yourself, we're just going to put it behind a paywall. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm with you on that one, but I'm not convinced that that's what happened with his DLC.
I don't know the direction they went with that, but
because he's totally skippable. You can not get him if you don't want him.
Which is bizarre to me, because I feel like he is probably the biggest, like, the most lore heavy DLC that they've added to the game. Like,
Yeah, but that just makes him a DLC.
I feel like the game is very different without, well, maybe not very different, but like is significantly different without his presence.
But like
there's a lot of perspective you're losing out on.
he does a bunch of world building, but he's actually not that in like I said, you can skip, you could just not go pick him up. You could never get him and you can complete Mass Effect 3 and you'll have a great time. You just won't have the perspective on that you wouldn't gain the perspective that he provides about the Protheans. That's the only thing he really gives is basically one big lore dump, which I like. It's cool. I'm glad but it doesn't feel like he's necessary to Mass Effect 3 in that sense, which makes him feel like a DLC to me. Because he's so skippable in a way that you can't drop Liara. You can't really drop Vega. I don't think either. You can't really drop like other Edie, for example. I feel like is a much more integrated character and doesn't feel like a DLC character in the way that Javik really does. So it doesn't bother me. All that just to say, it doesn't bother me that he was a day one DLC.
And I mean, like, as much as I'm arguing for Javik's inclusion, like, I use him for like maybe one mission in DLC 3. Yeah. Or in Mass Effect 3.
Yeah, he doesn't. And that being said, also, a lot of the complaints were like, well, if the content was ready, why didn't you just put it in the game? And the answer is like, that's a lot of content. He has a significant amount of content. You got your money's worth out of the DLC for Javik if you bought it.
That is true.
Because unlike some other things that various other games have done for their DLC, that was a big, well integrated DLC. Like he matters more. He's better. He as a character and as a lore dump and as a mission, he's better than either Kasumi or Zaid, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
He's better developed. You got way more for your money out of him than you did for either of those other two. Despite the fact that I adore Kasumi's mission, and I like Kasumi a lot.
Honestly, I forgot those two characters were DLC.
Yeah, but they weren't. I don't remember if they were day one or not, but they were pretty early as well. But they don't feel nearly as integrated as Javik does, and I'd much rather have a character like that. But anyway, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I guess it comes down to, do we want the character with the better, like Javik brings all this stuff with him. I don't particularly like him. If it had been a different Prothean who'd been a scientist or something, or nicer, with a different personality, I feel like I would have gotten just as much out of them providing the same lore dump versus I love Samara. I think that Samara's, and the only reason why I don't use Samara more as one of my companions is that there's, especially in Mass Effect 2, you are stuffed to the gills.
There's so many good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really like her. I would
be fine. I would be fine with going Samara. Like as much as I was, pushing for Javik, like I like both the characters for different reasons.
Yeah. I think as a character, I think Samara wins. I 100% see where you're coming from with the additional lore that comes along with Javik and all that additional perspective and like world building that comes from that character is huge. But I think we just got to give it to Samara.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, let me mark that down. And well, on that note, we will catch you guys next week, where we are going to finish Mass Effect 1.
All right. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to the N7 Project. If you would like to read the upcoming playthrough roadmap, there is a link in the show notes below. We can be found on Twitter as @N7Project, at our website, masseffectpodcast.com, or via our Discord, scottpaladin.com/Discord. If you'd like to support the podcast, honestly, the easiest way to be to write us a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or your podcatcher of choice. We read every one of those, and it gives us a real boost every time, and it helps people find the podcast. Or if you want to give monetary support, all funds to our Patreon, patreon.com/monsterpod, will also go to supporting this podcast. Mass Effect, its associated characters, sounds, plot points, whatever, are copyright by some giant faceless corporation. The N7 Project was produced and edited by me, Scott Paladin, and hosted by myself and my best friend, Zach Jakeways. Audio is copywritten 2022, Scott Paladin. This has been a Library of Cursed Knowledge production.